What's going on, guys, and welcome to my 2023 Formula 1 British Grand Prix driver tier list video. So the British Grand Prix, I think it was a good race. It was definitely a good race, maybe a little bit kind of overrated because of, you know, the hype of having Lando P2, P1 at the start of the race, jumping Max at the start, and, you know, both McLarens in podium positions. And to be honest, without the safety car, it probably would have been a McLaren 2-3. So I think that the hype around that made this race a lot better. It still was a good race, even if you take that away, but there was definitely a bit in the middle where there wasn't a whole lot going on. The gaps grew quite large, so it definitely wasn't an amazing race. It wasn't the best British Grand Prix we've had in the last couple of years, but it was still a good race, and the excitement of, you know, the McLarens and all that sort of stuff was very good. So let's get into my driver tier list as usual, rating these drivers from S tier being the best down to F tier being the absolute worst, and yeah, based on this weekend. So we start, as we always do, with Alexander Albon. It was a P8 finish for Albon. He was right behind Alonso, and he put in a great performance this weekend. To be fair, the Williams did seem very good, because even Sargent, P11 for Sargent, his best race weekend of the season as well. He's had a good last two races, actually. So, yeah. Do I put him in S? Was it that good from Albon? I think if he got Alonso, I probably would have put him in S. That Williams does seem a lot better now than it was. So I think I'm going to go for... No, you know what? I'm going to go for S. I think it was a brilliant show for Albon. He did a really good job to pick up those points. He had a few pretty damn good overtakes as well. One of them on... Was it Sainz? I think it was an overtake on Sainz, and he I mean, to be fair, Sainz seemed to be really struggling on those hard tyres, but Albon did a great move on him. So yeah, I think an S for Albon. He did a really good job this week, and with a car that it was definitely very good on this track. Fernando Alonso, not the best weekend for Alonso actually. The Aston Martin has dipped down the order a little bit here. Was, I think, quite comfortably the, fifth quickest car. So, you know, Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes, I say, were all on top of the Aston Martin this week. And it's, yeah, a bit of a poor weekend. I don't think it's really because of Alonso himself. It's just more the car. But I'm going to put Alonso in C, just because, yeah, compared to where he has been, yes, it's probably just the car, but he isn't quite there with the performances. As my computer does a little update thing there. I do not care, go away. But yeah, it was fine from Alonso. He didn't really do anything wrong, but ultimately the pace in that Aston just wasn't there. So I think a C, considering we've put him in like A and S for a lot of this season so far. I think a C, maybe a little bit harsh, but yeah, I think it evens things out from where we have been putting him. Valtteri Bottas finished in P12 actually. So not too bad for Bottas. He started from the back because he got disqualified from qualifying for not being able to give a fuel sample after his car shut down at the end of Q1. But all in all, it's P12, but I think probably helped by other cars, you know, having issues and the safety car and everything. So I think it's just a C for Bottas. Didn't really see a whole lot of him, not a whole lot to say. De Vries, another bad weekend, last of the runners, a couple of seconds back from his teammate. He also, I believe, I'm not sure if he actually made contact. I think he did with, I believe it was Kevin Magnussen towards the start of the race. It wasn't terrible from De Vries this weekend, but it's still a D. It's not good. It is not looking good for his future in Formula 1. He just is not performing. Pierre Gasly was actually having a really good race up in the top 10. He pulled off some amazing overtakes. I think it was on... Who was it? It might have been Sainz as well, actually, and maybe one on someone else, like round the outside. He had some really good moves. Unfortunately, got punted off by Stroll towards the end of the race, but it wasn't really his fault. But yeah, looked pretty good this weekend. Definitely the better of the two Alpine drivers this weekend. And I mean, ultimately, Ocon had an issue anyway. But yeah, I think it's a B. I think it's a B for Gasly. Did some really great moves. Is it an A? I mean, he didn't finish the race, but it wasn't really his fault. And I think a B. I think a B is about where I've got to put him. Lewis Hamilton, of course, finished on the podium. He was quite lucky to get on the podium, to be fair. If it wasn't for the safety car, I think it would have been Piastri on that podium. And Piastri kept with him on the hard compound tyres and actually gained on him to, I think when they crossed the line, they were within a second. Well, I'm looking at it right here. Yeah, pretty much exactly a second between them. So I'm going to give Hamilton an A. Of course, he got on the podium. He did a good job with what he had. He got quite lucky with the safety car, but it was a good performance, but it wasn't an S tier because I do think he did kind of luck into that safety car a little bit, but still, it didn't have a great start either. Actually got overtaken by a few cars at the start running wide, but yeah, all in all, it's a podium for Hamilton, so good job. Nico Hülkenberg, it was another decent qualifying P11, but then, yeah, got damage in the race, kind of fell down the order. Damage wasn't his fault. Perez overtook him, and I mean, maybe slightly his fault, but very, very minimal contact, but it was enough to break his front wing, and he just kind of fell back from there. Finished P13 in the end. I think it's a pretty easy C for Hülkenberg. Charles Leclerc finished P9. To be fair, kind of screwed over with the safety car. He pitted a little bit before the safety car came out. Then they pitted him again onto a set of softs. Was it softs? I don't know. Leclerc did like 2 stops and ultimately just, yeah, wasn't 100% convinced on his strategy. But I think that he got quite screwed over with the safety car. But yeah, I think it's a C for Leclerc. I mean, it's a bit of a woeful day for Ferrari, only scoring P9 and P10, but not really Leclerc's fault, but at the same time, couldn't, you know, get there with the McLarens. Yes, the McLarens took a big step this weekend, but yeah, I think a C's, it's reasonable. It's just kind of okay, fine. Magnussen had car issues all weekend in qualifying and in the race. His engine went up in flames. It's just a C. Didn't really have much else going on for him. Lando Norris is an easy S, although not the driver that I voted for driver of the day. Did amazing, jumped Max at the start, led the British Grand Prix for I think 5 laps, then got overtaken, but he did a really good job in that McLaren, which is, I'm hoping that this form is not just like a one-off. I mean, he showed great form in Austria as well. And now with Oscar having the upgrades as well, and they've still got more upgrades to come, they're looking really good, and I hope this can continue because McLaren's probably my favourite team, and Lando is probably my favourite driver, so I really want them to do well. So yeah, it's an easy S for him. Esteban Ocon didn't have a great qualifying and then had issues in the race. It's just a C. I don't think I can give him much more than that. He could have had a better quali, but ultimately very, very close at the top there. And he was definitely bested by his teammate this weekend, but engine issues or some kind of issue put him out of the race quite early on. Sergio Perez, another terrible qualifying, although don't really think it was his fault. He was the first one to go out in Q1, you know, after the red flag, I think it was, for like runs at the end, and when the track was kind of just drying off. And yeah, he was the first to cross the line. Ultimately, the track just evolved and he got knocked out. So I don't think it was really his fault. Fought through to 6th in the race. Maybe not quite as far as I was expecting. I think it's a B for Perez. I mean, yeah, he needs to get into Q3 again next time. Although I don't think it was really his fault this time. He needs to do it because that's what, 5 non-Q3 appearances in a row in by far the quickest car on the grid. It's just, I really want to stop saying this. It's not acceptable. Oscar Piastri, my driver of the day, because he had the McLaren upgrades, but I think Lando did have a slightly more upgrades. Like from what I heard, Piastri got the upgrades that Norris had in Austria, and then I think Norris had like a new front wing or something for the British Grand Prix, but Oscar firstly challenged Max into turn 1, would have probably got past him if he didn't kind of get boxed in by his teammate, kept with Max at the start, was looking comfortable for P3, came into the pits earlier than his teammate, put on the hard compound tyres. A lap or two after that, the safety car came out. That put him down into P4, got jumped by Hamilton because of the safety car, and ultimately missed out on P3, but finished P4, was catching Hamilton towards the end on the hard compound tyres. I think it was a brilliant weekend for Piastri. For him, in his rookie season, in only, what is this, round 11, his 11th Grand Prix in Formula 1, to be pretty much on the pace of Lando this weekend, and to fight in the top 3 and top 4 in your rookie season, when you've been, towards the back end of the points. I think he'd only scored 5 points prior to this weekend. He just picked up another 12, so that's crazy. For him to do that, I think is an amazing job, and he was, although I think Lando, yes, did better this weekend, I think considering the circumstances of how long Oscar's been in F1, I think, for me, he was my driver of the day quite easily. So it's an easy S for me. For him, George Russell finished P5 in the end. Started on the soft compound tyres, where some others were on different tyres. Yeah, it was fine from Russell. It wasn't amazing. He was ahead of Hamilton, and then he kind of got screwed over by the safety car. But it was an alright race from Russell. Nothing special. I think it's just a B for me. Carlos Sainz, yeah, I've got to put him in a C as well. Once again, just screwed over with Ferrari strategy. Fell like a stone once the safety car came in at the end, towards the end of the race. Whereas Lando and Oscar on the hards managed to stay where they were. Sainz lost like 3 positions really quickly. But yeah, I think it's just a C. Just unfortunate for Ferrari, not really their fault, not the driver's faults either. Logan Sargent, I thought, had a really good weekend, P11, had a decent qualifying, should have probably gone to Q3, but ultimately, yeah, it was, I think, a pretty decent weekend for him. I'm going to give him a B. I don't think I can give him much more than that, but he didn't get into the points, but I think a good race for Sargent, maybe his best so far. And he had a pretty good Austria too, so that is good. Lance Stroll, I think, was pretty poor this weekend, wasn't on the pace of his teammate quite, and was ultimately, he punted off Gasly, completely his fault, and he actually run Gasly wide at a point where I was surprised that he didn't get given a penalty, to be honest. I think he should have been given a penalty, and he was just a little bit reckless, to be fair, and ended up P14. And yeah, I think just because of that reckless driving, and because ultimately I think, isn't E harsh? I'm thinking it is an E harsh. I think it is. I think an E... No, I don't think it's harsh. I think, yeah, he punted Gasly off. He was too aggressive. And yeah, wasn't on the pace of his teammate. The Aston wasn't very good anyway, but yeah, I think that's fair enough. Yuki Tsunoda, there's just no pace in that AlphaTauri. Did beat his teammate though, so I think it's a C for Tsunoda. Can't really say much more. Max Verstappen, of course he won the race. I'm not going to give him an S though. I'm going to give him an A because he didn't get a good start, and ultimately he didn't pull away from the McLarens as quickly, as much as I thought he would, and he took a little while to get past them as well. I heard that apparently the Red Bulls aren't as good at kind of getting tyre temperature, whereas the McLarens were, because I was very surprised at the start when Lando actually had like a second advantage to Verstappen after the first lap. I was like, hey, what's going on here? Verstappen did eventually warm his tyres up and get ahead, but he didn't breeze away ahead. He didn't absolutely fly away. So yeah, I think it's an A for Verstappen. He still won by a considerable margin, but we can't just give him an S every time for winning. We've got to peg him back a little bit, because frankly, if we just give him an S when he wins, he's going to have an S every single race weekend. So I think an A because of a few little mistakes here and there. And then finally, Zhou Guanyu finished in, where did he finish? P15. Not a great weekend for Zhou, I'm going to be honest. I think mostly just the Alfa Romeo, sorry, not being there on pace. So I think it's a C. A lot of drivers in C here, but yeah, not really much to say from him. But there we have it. So for me, my driver of the day was Oscar Piastri. I think he was brilliant. And the worst driver, it's got to be Stroll for punting Gasly off and just for being a little bit reckless. But yeah, mostly an average race for most drivers. But yeah, definitely standouts being Piastri, Norris, and Albon. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.